hello, and welcome to the Common Geeking Program. We are a book club-style podcast where each episode we discuss a different topic from our own geeky and nerdy perspectives. I am your host, Jeff Leavitt, and this week we are going to be talking about Black Widow, the movie, not the spider. This time around, Yeah.
This is going to be like Destiny all over again. I had so many facts ready to talk about spiders.
You were so prepped to talk about fucking spiders.
Man, love those little guys.
If we're talking about Black Widow spiders, then I could definitely shift it into Beast Wars by talking about Black Arachnia, one of the best female characters in the entire Transformers franchise. So if you've got stuff prepared for that, I've got a whole notes section on my computer that is prepared just for this very instant. Yeah. So we could shift that way if you want, or we could talk about the Black Widow movie. It's up to you.
But real quick, before we talk about the Black Widow movie, I've come across this article that says tiny dwarf cow draws huge crowds in Bangladesh despite coronavirus lockdown. And like if ever and if ever there was like a sentence I need in order to explain Bengali people, that would probably be the sentence.
As is often a problem with the audio medium, my face slowly morphed in such a dramatic way as you kept reading that sentence to me, in a way nobody will ever know, but that was astonishing.
How many lives will this fucking dwarf cow be responsible for?
No, Jeff, that's the wrong question. That is the wrong question. How many lives is this dwarf cow worth? That is the question.
At least 12.
He answers a lot. At least.
Yeah. Anyway, this time around, I enjoyed my two fellow nerds who have already started talking, even though they have not introduced themselves. Who am I talking to?
My name is Colin. Hello.
Hi, I'm Taeemul, or Chowder, whichever you prefer.
Chowder bringing us all the best up-to-date news on the on Bangladesh and their cow-related troubles. All right, friends. This time around, we're again, like I said, talking about Black Widow movie. We're going to start off by summarizing and discussing it, and then we'll end with a little rating section to talk about if we thought it was worthwhile or enjoyable. You guys want to get on into the summary?
Well, before we get into the summary, this movie is available in a variety of theatrical formats as well as a variety of non-theatrical formats. That variety being everyone's houses.
How did you see it?
Yeah, so if we want to roundtable it, I saw it in IMAX on opening night, and then again yesterday in a non-IMAX regular person lame guy theater. But that's because my friend rented it out and invited a bunch of people, and I just got to hang out with a bunch of vaccinated people. And
rented out the whole theater?
Yeah, it was at Bowtie, the Bowtie chain. It's like only, from what I looked at, it's only like $200 to get the whole theater.
Yeah, are we talking about the Bowtie in Schenectady? Because that fucking theater will do goddamn anything to get people into that theater.
No, so this was actually, I thought it was going to be the Bowtie in Schenectady.
There's another Bowtie in the capital region?
There's a Bowtie now in Saratoga. It is a chain. And it is definitely the same chain. Like, the lobby looks exactly the same. Now,
I knew Bowtie was a chain. I just didn't know that we had any other ones nearby.
For those of you who don't care about the local geography of upstate New York and the Capital District, Schenectady is right by the Capitol where I live, and Saratoga is not right next to the Capitol. And so I thought I was going to the Bowtie in Schenectady. Oops. As I was walking to my car, I checked the text message, says Saratoga, and I'm just like, I'm going to be late. I went 90 miles an hour. I was really glad I'd already seen the movie once because I missed the first 8 minutes.
Yeah, we almost missed the first 10 minutes when we went to go see it last night, just because we were so used to just driving to a movie theater, parking and walking in. But we live in Long Beach now, so it took like half an hour to park. Yeah, but luckily they have showings every half hour, so we just talked to the person at the box office and they just pushed it back, and we were right on time.
Hell yeah. Chowder, how did you watch this?
I went to Rotterdam Square Mall with my sister.
That's a thing?
Oh yeah, Rotterdam Square Mall still exists.
What's it called now? Is it like Vista Port or whatever?
I mean, it's slowly being taken over by Via Entertainment, but
Yeah.
you know, like
Wow.
there's like a Dave and Buster's ripoff over there, and a really
Do they still have the
boring
fucking
Aquarium.
do they still have the merry-go-round?
Oh, that went out a while ago.
yeah that went
Anyway,
out.
to shift away from very narrow casting to Schenectady, folks.
Yeah.
So none of us watched it via Premiere Access on Disney Plus, it would seem.
No,
Of course not. No,
not-
because
not
none of
worth
us
it
live
at
with
all.
more than more than two people who wanted to watch this movie together. So it would not have been worth it to do it that way.
Well, actually, the
Financially.
thing is, I had no plans to watch the movie, but like my little sister and my cousins wanted to see the movie, so I took them to see it, and that's how I ended up watching Black Widow.
Gotcha.
S-
All right,
sound
let's
more
sit-
excited about it.
Yeah, let's fucking get into what we're talking about, maybe.
So Black Widow is a film released in July of 2021, but it was supposed to be released in 2020.
Yeah.
Guess what happened? Everything.
yeah,
it is-
the big
what-
thing that happened. And if you don't know,
Is this
you know what? Probably it'd be better if you'd never found out, to be honest.
Yes, Corvid 20.
Corporate 20? So this is part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh, wait,
It's
or
Scarlett
is it-
Johansson's swan song, allegedly, her last film, possibly in the franchise
As Black
after.
Widow, yeah.
Spoiler alert: her demise in Endgame. This is set after the film Captain America: Civil War
And
before
Infinity
Avengers:
War.
Infinity War.
Yeah.
Actually, this movie is weirdly, and I'll probably circle back to this later, it's set entirely during Captain America Civil War. The end of this movie
Yeah. Yep.
is before
yeah, I
the end of
noticed that.
Captain America
Yeah,
Civil
and-
War. So if you're watching Civil War, that little bit at the end where Tony is reading Steve's letter to himself, this movie takes place pretty much during that letter read.
Yeah.
It's weird, right? The plot of the movie doesn't really have anything to do with Civil War, so like this has just been a very weird couple of days for Black Widow.
Yeah, she just like gets up to shit no matter what. But that's it. Is this like the 23rd movie in the MCU franchise?
I stopped counting a while ago.
Probably.
It's also the first since it's the first movie to come out in the franchise in 2 years. It's the first one to come out since the Marvel shows have been happening, where you have WandaVision,
Yeah.
Falcon, Winter Soldier, and Loki. So stuff is a changing.
Yeah, I was really surprised that none of the movie, except for the post-credit scene, took place after her death. I thought that it might open with that kind of thing, or like open with like,
Yeah.
her final thoughts is falling or some shit like that. But I
I
sort of
kind
feel
of
like
like that it was
Well,
just like set in the time it's
You're
set. I did
probably
appreciate
wondering
that.
how I got here.
Yeah, you're probably wondering how I got chucked off this cliff by my best friend.
they already did
Boy,
that
have I
joke
got
in the
a story for
MCU
you.
in Ragnarok.
Yeah,
although
yeah, that is literally like the
to
opening
be
line
fair,
of the
she
movie.
didn't get chucked
Yeah.
off. She threw herself off, which
Yeah. Anyway, let's maybe talk about the plot of this movie. So like we said, it is set in between Civil War. So this movie takes place in between Civil War and Infinity War, which if you're not, keeping track and you're finding it hard to remember what was going on between those that movie, basically Black Widow, Captain America, and sort of, Falcon and some other people were on the run. What this movie kind of not really changes but recontextualizes is that the scene where Captain America breaks out Falcon and Ant-Man and everyone from the raft actually takes place after this movie, and Steve Rogers and Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff were the only two that really got away, and they were on the run separately from each other, and this is about her being on the run. And then
this basically picks up right after Civil War. It opens with a 1995 scene of a young Natasha and her family on the run,
quote
and
unquote
they're like
family.
trying to get to and we find out that they're all Russian sleeper agents posing as a family. That's not really her sister. That's not really her dad. before we get what was really interesting to me is we get an opening credit sequence, like the theme song for a TV show, or, you know, just an older fashioned intro scene where we get a montage showing her indoctrination into the Red Room. Her
because they never
groomed.
They never really told that story properly, so I feel like it had to, you know, like kind of remind people of like, okay, these are the lines that were dropped in like Age of Ultron. I think was the main movie.
I think their choice of song was kind
of a weird like somber remix of "Smells Like Teen Spirit"
or "Smells Like Teen Spirit." Yeah, but it's like the song has nothing to do with.
Yeah, the montage is depicting like spycraft, and the song
like "Smells Like Teen Spirit" is like
not
nothing. It's wild how they chose a song that just has nothing to do with what's going on screen. Like it's not like, oh, it's the opposite of what's going on screen. It's just like,
and what's interesting to me,
nothing lines up.
No, it seems very much just like, oh, I like this version of the song, I'll put it in. What bugged me, though, is they turned it into a 4-chord song, which, for those who don't know, is just an extraordinarily common musical structure. So they turned it into this thing that most songs already are. So if you're going to try to use this very common structure, why does it have to be "Smells Like Teen Spirit"?
Teen Spirit, Colin.
Any number of other
Spirit.
What am I saying? I think I'm saying that.
You're saying Team Spirit.
Okay, "Smells Like Teen." I know. I primarily know it through Weird Al, so forgive me my sins.
Where Colin gets most of his knowledge about music is from Weird Al.
It's all Weird Al. Weird Al taught me the 4-chord song. But after that, like what I thought it was interesting to do an opening credits in general with that montage. But then
I
we
think
just
it made sense because again, it was just kind of like refreshing your memory on this thing that you like haven't really seen. You haven't seen the story told. You only heard about it, so it's just like, you know, a lot of it is like, well, they don't want to just do a bunch of like dialogue exposition drops, so they have to kind of, you know, just like get people to understand the basics of what's going on, which you kind of do, right? Because it's like there's been a ton of, you know, like stories with Russian sleeper agents, you know, in that, you know, so it makes sense. I did like, you know, since we're talking about songs, I do like the use of American Pie at the beginning there when they're like running away and they're like, oh, this is our time to leave, you know, our 3-year sleeper mission in the United States and go back to Russia. And for the kids, Natasha and her younger sister, what's her name?
Yelena.
Yeah, Yelena, who she was even younger than Natasha and did not even know that they were there. Like, as like she straight up thought that they lived in Ohio, right, and that they were actually Americans. So this was kind of their introduction to that. So when they're like driving away to their little, you know, airport where they're being chased down, they start singing American Pie, and it's I don't know, a wild choice but really good.
Which was Weird Al ruined that for me too, because Weird Al has a parody of that is summarizing the plot of The Phantom Menace, and I know that version so well that I couldn't even focus on the significance of what you just described because I kept thinking about Darth Vader.
Also, like the Weird Al version of that song, it's like it's so seamless that like my mind always just merges the two songs together.
It really, I couldn't stop it from going back and forth. Anyway, after that, all that prelude stuff, we actually smash cut to her on the run, outfoxing Secretary Thunderbolt Ross, and she's on a boat in Norway, off to get a new life where her fixer has gotten her like a trailer, and she's just gonna hole up.
Also, it's like, you know, we're supposed to be impressed how she managed to pull one over on Secretary Ross.
Is not like, competent.
Secretary Ross is not that hard to pull one over on.
He has never proven himself a worthy adversary.
To anybody?
I think the last time we saw him in I think it was Infinity War was literally him getting hung up on by Rhodey. So like him walking in and her saying, "Hey, your body sucks."
Do you think they're ever going to do Red Hulk? I feel like they probably aren't, right?
No, they can't. I don't think they will.
At this point.
At this point, no. They would probably change it because Martin Freeman plays Thunderbolt Ross's son, Everett Ross, in Civil War and
I don't think he is his son. Is he?
Is Everett
in
Ross?
The comics, they're completely unrelated.
Oh, well, I thought they were related in the movies.
I thought they were related too, but then I looked it up, and I don't think there's actually any dialogue in the movie that relates them.
They
aside
definitely
from them just
don't.
having the same last name.
They definitely don't explicitly say it. But yeah, where she's in Norway, I mean, say what you will about the genericism of Marvel movies. I really in IMAX in particular, I really enjoyed the focus on the environment, the real scale of the mountains and of the towns in the background. I really liked how all this Norway stuff was shot.
Yeah, the first 10 minutes were great.
Too bad we don't spend very long here.
Yeah.
Before, what is it? We cut to
Morocco? Before we cut to Morocco, but with an orange filter over it.
Well, yeah.
That's the annoying thing. Every Middle Eastern country
she basically
filter on it because American propaganda.
So she gets this mail from her sister, who in the meantime we see is a Black Widow working for the Red Room, basically. I mean, all we really know when we first see it is that she's working for, Russian government or something like that. And she apprehends an agent who's like smuggling out this vial of red gas, and she gets sprayed with the gas. And basically we find out that gas was like an antidote to this like mind control thing that all of the new Black Widows are on.
So then this is going to be
she escapes from there. And
this is going to be
sends
the first of
Natasha
my many shouts out for Florence Pugh as Yelena here, because even just like her facial expressions in the moment when she like gets sprayed with the gas and comes to, we had no idea that she was like under any sort of subjugation before this.
Right,
and
we probably figured that she was just being a loyal Russian agent or whatever, right?
Yeah, and her facial expression completely sells in this moment the fact that we had no idea what the allegiances of the hunters or the target were here. I think that all rests on her facial performance, and it's really impressive.
Yeah, no, that works pretty well. So anyway, she sends that to Natasha, and like the photo of them as children to be like, yo, it's me, right? And Natasha, who unbeknownst to her has this in her car because she hasn't really checked her mail yet, she just kind of tossed it in her trunk, gets attacked by the Taskmaster, who is
my favorite British game show.
who is a character in the comics who is a little bit changed for this, but the powers are still more or less the same, where the Taskmaster can basically like watch anyone's movement and then like mimic their fighting style. So so they like
like any learned skill Taskmaster.
Right, so they fight like Captain America, or they like. There's one point where I'm not sure if it's supposed to be a Black Widow thing, but they do a flip at one point that's like very Spider-Man-y.
No, I think that was supposed to be Black Widow. No, it is supposed to be Black Widow because like she did the move like a few seconds earlier. And then,
I'm talking about later in the movie that I'm just trying to pick out some of the fighting styles that I can see Taskmaster do. Like. Definitely does
we also
Hawkeye
did get a
stuff,
clip before
America
Taskmaster's
stuff.
deployment of the Taskmaster watching and being uploaded a clip of Hawkeye fighting Black Panther.
Yeah.
And then we cut pretty quickly to the scene where it is she is literally being mimicked by the Taskmaster, like in the moment. And I think that, again, a moment that, and the script is probably pretty thin, is sold by pretty good performance and like the choreography really clearly communicates what's happening.
Yeah, the problem is like the editing is really bad in my opinion. Like it's constantly cutting around and like jumping around. Basically doing what the Bourne movies did with the shaky cam.
I was not a fan of the up close fight edits. I really enjoyed the ones that were a little more. I found that when they were like chasing vehicles or doing big action set pieces, those were a lot more easy to follow. Up close, I had the same problem as you.
Yeah, because in general, I felt like the fight scenes with Taskmaster were like a little bit anticlimactic. Like I felt like they didn't really use the character as much as they could have, and like. Have there be like a problem solving moment where you're like, well, how do you beat someone who fights just like you and can fight like other powerful people, right? Like it only ever really expresses itself as this character is very good at fighting for this
Yeah.
reason. But the specific problem of them using other people's fighting styles never really comes up, other than just like Easter egging different choreographed moments from like previous Marvel movies. You know what I mean?
I'll probably have some thoughts on that in the ratings for sure.
Yeah. And on one hand, I kind of get the problem. Like, realistically, Taskmaster could only like copy like four Marvel characters.
They're not going to be Hulk or Thor.
He can't. Taskmaster can't do Hulk or Thor, and the only person they'd have seen would have been Captain America, Hawkeye, Black Widow, and quote-unquote Black Panther. We see Taskmaster do like the Black Panther claw thing at one point.
Right.
We never actually see them
I was like, what did she learn? Did she learn the pose, or did she learn to put teeny tiny little kitty cat claws in her suit? What is that?
Hey, spoilers.
What is happening?
She never does anything Black Panther, so...
Taskmaster doing arts and crafts. Did we just gender the character? Because that is
of a
spoiler. Okay.
Yeah, that's why I was saying, so the big reveal...
Here's the thing. So I will say...
We'll get to that later, but...
I will say, the movie, the people don't know Taskmaster's identity and gender them as a he to throw you off. I'm not going to lie, as soon as Taskmaster walked on the screen, I was like, that's a lady. And I was wrong about who I thought it was.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be the mom. I thought it was going to be the mom until the mom came back, right?
Yeah,
and then I was like, okay, who else could this be? Oh, it's obviously this person, because it's if they would not have this character be as silent without like a personality or saying anything if it was just some trained assassin. You know, it's going to be someone we've seen before, and at that point in the movie there's literally only two people who were like we thought were dead but are going to come back. You know what I mean? So
after the Taskmaster encounter, Black Widow realizes Scarlett Johansson, Natasha, that's the name, realizes Taskmaster is going after the vials of red stuff that Yelena sent. So she makes her way back to Budapest, where Yelena is hiding, to figure out what the fuck is going on with the vials.
Right. Where she learns that the Red Room is still active, even though she thought that she killed the guy who was in charge of it, because years later she basically used the what's his name? Just so I can stop just fucking saying it. What is the guy's name? Yeah, Dreykov used his daughter basically to find out his location, and then blew up the whole thing, killing both of them allegedly.
So we heard in the first Avengers.
I just call him generic Russian dude.
Generic Russian. Honestly, I don't even want to do that, because I thought his performance was fantastic.
I thought he was pretty good.
Check his name. It's Ray Winstone. I think
nothing about him's really a fucking character. Like, why is he doing this? What are his end goals? What has he actually even been doing? Like, we know he's got like spies and shit all over the place, but like, what is he doing with those spies?
I think we'll get to dive into that a little later, just once we have more context out in the open. But in the Avengers movies, we hear Black Widow and Hawkeye constantly refer to Budapest. What Jeff just said about like using a little girl to find and blow up Dreykov is what happened in Budapest, and they were like on the run for days, and that's where they are now, where Yelena and Natasha are now when they realize, the Red Room is still a thing. And this is where the movie is basically just like, I don't know. I think this is where you're either on board or you're not, to an extent, because essentially the rest of the movie is her saying, well, I got nothing better to do. Might as well find and kill Dreykov and shut down the Red Room. I like the stakes are not established beyond personal stakes, which is fine. But
this is a side quest for Black Widow.
Yeah,
it's also it's just, I think it's especially strange. I think because it kind of epitomizes the fact that like maybe this movie like like you said, it's kind of a side quest where it's kind of like off to the side, in the way that like the villain of this movie is someone that we thought was dead before and now is again dead after. So like it changed nothing about anything that happens after the movie,
like the villain of the movie was not relevant before.
So I actually gotta plant a flag here. I see a lot of people making this argument like this movie is not seriously consequential in the scope of the MCU, and I'm like, doesn't have to be. Jeff, I agree with
so-
your point that it's like
Yeah.
we did.
No, but
I don't
here's-
think they set up the concept of the villain
get
well
that. I get that,
because we don't understand that the villain exists until we already think he's dead, and then we're told he's not.
Yeah.
Like the intrigue around that is sort of fumbled.
I think,
But
yeah,
in terms
exactly.
of whether
Well, that's
or
my
not this
thing,
needs
is that,
to
like,
be moving the franchise forward when it's already a prequel, I just don't think needs to be the case. I think it's fine on its own.
I guess my thing is,
look, I don't need it to move the franchise forward or whatever.
It's a bottle
but
episode.
It's just like you're gonna have to work. But you're gonna have to work harder to make me care. And I don't know if the movie really managed to.
Yeah,
okay.
I guess my
I
thing
see
is,
that.
like, I don't mind a low stakes movie. For example, like in the MCU, for example, like Ant-Man and the Wasp, right, was literally about saving one person, and it was like the first movie after Infinity War, which was like this big world breaking, everyone dies, half the world dies thing, right? That movie managed to make me care because there was significant character development and things like that. Things that did matter later, even if they weren't mattering on like a world-shattering scale. Whereas this movie, I think, like, if it was just a random prequel that would, like, if Natasha hadn't died, for example, in Endgame, right?
Yeah.
And this was just a random prequel. This is when this movie is set, but it'll have consequences maybe in the second Black Widow movie, right? Then I'm like, okay, that's pushing me in the direction of enough for me to like care about these things, even if it's a low stakes movie. But all the character development in this movie, literally, like all of Natasha's character development happens before the last time that we saw her. So it's sort of like shoehorning in character development, which I don't even think was overly strong in the movie to begin with. And then it's like, it's the only consequential thing, quote unquote, is like having Yelena come back to, like, in the end credit scene to be like, oh, fucking Julia Louis-Dreyfus is like, you gotta go hunt down Hawkeye because he's responsible for Black Widow's death. And it's just like, she's not even the villain in the movie, so that feels like not proper setup either. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think for me the problem is, like, you know, Black Widow's characterization / character development doesn't ultimately matter. Like, the central theme of her character development.
What do you mean it doesn't matter?
Hold on.
Do you mean in the scope of the franchise or the scope of the movie?
Let me talk first, man. Okay. Like the theme is like family, right? Like like getting in touch with a fake family who kind of turns out to be her real family in a sense, right? But like, you know, before or after that, it doesn't really come up, so like it's all kind of moot.
Well, yeah, but that comes to the point that this is a standalone movie in a way, despite the fact that the word Avengers is mentioned 12 times, add all the times we hear other characters' names. But like, again, it is okay to watch this movie in a vacuum.
Yeah, but like,
it is one of the few movies that's built
if
that
I
way.
watch this movie in a vacuum, I wouldn't care either, because the movie kind of relies on you knowing who Black Widow is to have that kind of attachment to her, you know?
So let's try to push a little further forward through the plot so that we can pull some examples for these arguments, because I think we agree on a lot of core stuff here, and I have some thoughts as to where these discrepancies may lie.
So basically what happens is they find out that the Red Room is still a thing. Well, Yelena already knew, but Natasha finds out. And then they're like, well, we need some help to bring it down. So they go to break out Alexei, who was their fake dad in the who was played by David Harbour, and he's the Red Guardian. He's like he's a Russian super soldier, basically. And I really like that it's played by David Harbour and his name is Alexei, because wasn't the Russian guy in Stranger Things also named Alexei?
Yes.
Am I misremembering that?
That's funny.
I think he was, yeah.
That's very funny. That's good.
Yeah.
David Harbour, also super fun casting.
He's great,
real fun to watch in this movie. We see him in prison, super old, beat up, covered in tattoos, gold tooth, stringy hair, messy beard, just like flexing his strength. when
and he's
Yelena
bragging
and
about
Natasha
like how he won a fight with Captain America, and then was like, and someone's like, when was it? And he's like, oh, in the 80s. And then someone's like, wasn't Captain America still in the ice in the 80s? Then he
just breaks the shit out of his arm. Really fun, just really fun little moment. And then we get the sequence of them, of Natasha and Yelena trying to use a helicopter to bust him out. Ultimately, not a whole lot of important stuff, just a fun hullabaloo of them getting out of the prison, which is in the middle of like the Siberian nowhere.
Yeah.
Between like a bunch of avalanching mountains. Sure.
Yeah. Well, she set off a big explosion, so I get that. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm just saying, it seems like kind of a bad place to make any building, but I guess if you're really trying to make a structure for where people can absolutely not escape, then sure. But
and also, I mean, wouldn't be the first time jail wouldn't be the first time a jail was made under really shitty conditions for the prisoners.
Wouldn't be the last either.
Yeah, I mean, I was more questioning that it's also under very shitty conditions for the people that fucking work there. Also
True in a lot of cases.
Fair. But I'm just saying, what must that goddamn commute be like?
So we also get, as soon as they get on the helicopter with Red Guardian in tow, they ask him where the Red Room is. He says, I don't know.
Because that's why they broke him out, because they're like, oh, he knew. He was real good friends with Dreykov.
Yep.
And he's just like, that swine put me in jail, motherfucker, except with a Russian accent.
There's also a fun moment where he asks, he's like, why are you so mean? Are you on your period? And then it jumps into a thing of like, I don't get my period. That's what happens when you have an involuntary hysterectomy, and like really twist the knife on the detail, clearly making him uncomfortable as they explain what was like the horrible things that were done to them.
Yeah, that was like very funny, dark humor. I like that. I like that.
Yeah, no, that was good. There was Polygon did an interview with Kate Shortland, the director. Apparently, what happened was one of the male writers on the film straight up just wrote a line.
Oh, God.
Saying, are you on your period, or something to that effect. And that was
God.
it. Yeah, so Florence Pugh, Kate Shortland, and Scarlett Johansson looked at that and were like, no.
We're running
No,
with
that's
that.
not going to fly.
That's fair.
Like, yes. So
really
the first thought was to cut it, and then they were like, nope, we're gonna blow them up. We're going to blow up their spot with this one and turn it into a moment. It's a really good moment.
And then basically Alexei reveals to them that their fake mom is actually still alive, and they go to reconvene with her in her little like pig farm science lab type place, and they both thought that she was dead. So at this point, up until now, I kind of thought that Taskmaster was going to be their mom, their fake mom. Yeah,
their real fake mom.
Although in retrospect, I feel like I did see her in trailers, so maybe not. But that's what I was thinking during the movie. But yeah, so they have a nice little fake family moment with each other where they're like arguing about whether or not they were a real family because their mission only lasted 3 years, and Alexei was just bored the whole time because he wanted to get back to his glory days being the Red Guardian, etc., etc. Lots of complicated emotions. And then they kind of split off to be like Alexei and Yelena having a moment where they're talking about the previous life, and then Natasha and the mother, whose name I cannot fucking remember, Melina, talking, and basically throughout their conversation, Natasha kind of unknowingly flips Melina, because Melina was like, as soon as you got here, I called the Red Room. But now we need to
I want to talk about some of the character work here, because I think that at least a lot of the stuff that we've been bringing up so far really has its roots in these scenes where they're at the table and the quote parents are saying like, hey, we did a great job on our mission. We really fooled them, huh? And Yelena is like, I thought you were my fucking family. And again, kills the performance. Because Natasha's trying to say, like, none of this matters, and Yelena says, yes, it does. And
it mattered to me. I think that kind of what Yelena was saying, Yeah,
100%. And I think that really contextualizes a lot of this. And it's easy to gloss over that this is an important moment in the development of all of their characters.
Yeah,
While I don't think this movie balances everything perfectly, I think that these 4 characters, for the time they are given, are fairly well-rounded, and this is why. Because that one polarizing line of "it mattered to me" recontextualizes all of their perceptions, and they all behave differently for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
That's efficient screenwriting, and it's great performances. I don't know if you guys have any different feelings about this scene.
That was a good scene. I agree.
Before we get back into some other scenes and talking about it, I kind of want to just like breeze through the rest of the plot, because like when you take out all the action and stuff, I just want to, bullet points, get it out there just so we can kind of be done with the plot and talk about everything more and be able to reference things we already talked about. So basically what happens is the mom supposedly flips on him because she said the Red Room is coming, and then the next time we see Natasha, she is knocked out. The Taskmaster and all of the other Red Room agents show up.
Widows, whatever. More widows.
Okay, that's something I'll talk about in a sec. But
they fly up to the Red Room, which is a floating base.
Yeah,
just a floating sky base. No questions there.
Yep. So, and then basically there's this reveal where Milena, was that her name? What's her name?
Milena, Milena.
Yeah. She's brought in to talk to Dreykov, and is, and then throughout the course of the conversation, it's revealed that they're using the like chameleon face masks that were first seen in Winter Soldier, I believe.
Yep. She used them.
Where instead they swapped clothes, and it's actually Natasha in there talking to Dreykov, and Milena is in the cell being talked at by the Red Guardian. And this is part of their breakout plan, and they put a knife in the belt of they're all
Yelena.
Names, man. Yeah, it's not. It can't be Melina and Yelena. No, it's not. What's the mom's name? Is it?
The mom's name is Melina. It's Melina, Yelena, Alexei, Natasha, Dreykov, and I don't remember Taskmaster's name.
And Antonia, I think.
Something like that. That.
No, it's Antonia because the character in the comics name is Anthony, so they just did a... Yeah.
They start their breakout when Dreykov realizes it's Natasha, not Melina, in front of him, and we learn that the Taskmaster is in fact Alexei's daughter. It's not Alexei, sorry. Dreykov's daughter. She survived the bombing in Budapest as a girl and had to be cybernetically enhanced, and that's how she became the Taskmaster. And then she leaves the room, and Black Widow tries to attack Dreykov before it turns out this mind control thing is sort of like a beta version of it is in her brain, so she can't attack him as long as she can smell him, which, I would like that power in particular. If my odor just protected me from violence, or just bugs. What if I could get a smell? I guess that's bug spray. Anyway.
If you could just emit bug spray.
If I could just sweat bug spray, my life would be so much better.
So yeah, we get this kind of scene where they're fighting, and Natasha is, we find out in a few minutes, is playing dumb about this because Melina already told her about this. So she's kind of like, making...
The term is pheromonal lock.
Yeah,
that's the term.
It should be.
It should
really be pointed out that humans don't work like ants. Pheromones wouldn't really be able to do that.
Yelena does say during the original reunion that this is an altering of brain chemistry. It's not just suggestibility. So the script is giving us just enough to say, don't look at it. Don't.
Fair enough. That's not like a flaw. That's just me being nitpicky. That's fine.
No, I'm with you. Pheromonal lock set off a red flag in my brain.
So, what basically ends up happening is Natasha ends up, she tries to get Dreykov to do it, but he's too weak, but she fucking smashes her face on the desk and breaks her nose, which, severs the fucking... the nerve or whatever. So it's like, oh, I can smell you now, motherfucker, therefore I can kill you.
I wish she said that. That would have been so good. I can smell you, motherfucker, so now I can kill you.
The point is she can't smell him. That's why she can kill him.
Well, yeah, fair.
Oh, damn it. No. Sorry. Rewrite disapproved.
So what ends up happening is Milena ends up, getting into an engine room or whatever and blowing it up. So the whole base ends up falling. Taskmaster and Alexei are fighting, and it's a good time. And right before Natasha is about to kill Dreykov, all of the other Black Widows break in. And basically what they're trying to do here is, like, they have all the vials of this red gas left, and they're trying to basically expose all the other Black Widows to it so that they'll be free and they can go live their own lives. And then the partially bigger stakes thing that they find out is that, like, you know, what makes sense about this organization is that they have people, like, placed all over the world, like in governments and shit like that, which is, you know, it's good that because, like, realistically, it would have been kind of wild if they didn't, if they had all this fucking floating sky base and this goddamn pheromonal lock and all that. You know, like that, I feel like that had to be added in there. Like, it does raise the stakes, but it would have been kind of bonkers if the stakes weren't risen.
But again,
for sure.
To what end? What is his?
Because yes, and
it's just Russia. You know, control everything.
He specifically says he just wants power and influence. And there were some articles saying that this was Marvel's #MeToo movie. And seeing a big, like, overweight, poorly groomed white guy smacking around a woman in her 30s in his private office and she can't do anything about it, I was like, okay, I see what you're talking about, articles. It's like it's a superficial presentation of the issue, but I do think it's effective.
Yeah, I mean, if Disney was willing to, like, burn alive all their overweight white dudes who abuse women, maybe I'd be willing to accept that. But from where I'm sitting,
and it's
probably one of them was involved in the movie.
from the perspective of the performers, from the perspective of, like, the performers and the directors and the writers wanting to tell this story, like I said, I think it's presented superficially. This power dynamic.
I don't think it. I wasn't thinking that at all, and you had told me that before I went to go see it.
Yeah,
you know.
It was really obvious to me because, like, the visual metaphor here is she's being smacked around by this man in power that she can't stop, and then she's like, "Hey, I can fight back," when she breaks her nose. But then all the other people that are subjugated by him, the widows, they come in and attack her. And it isn't until Yelena breaks the vials over them that they're released. And it's like, again, it's a little clumsy. It's superficial. The metaphor is like, hey, support each other against these oppressive individuals. Which, again, on its face, a nice message. To Chowder's point, we got work to do.
Yeah.
So that is where this comes from, and, like, to the point that the villain is underdeveloped, I think they were relying on that idea and that imagery to make it connect more than the story permitted. And I think that's a very subjective thing.
I actually don't have a problem with how much or how little Dreykov was developed. I just wish they developed Taskmaster more. You know, like, I thought it was a little bit lame at the end when, like, I mean, I guess to all of what you just said, it makes sense that they did this, but, like, basically what ends up happening in the movie is, like, you know, they all manage to, well, they blow up Dreykov, he's dead, and then the rest of them manage to survive the fall back down to Earth through, you know, lots of action fight scene shenanigans.
Honestly,
I
really love that set piece of them falling down. Visually, I thought that was so much fun. It's very stupid,
it was a cool.
Fun.
There were some problems I had with it because, like, I felt like, oh, they pulled the parachute and then immediately landed on the ground, and I'm like, oh, how did you survive?
Yeah,
that?
If you did that, you'd have no legs.
Yeah, but anyway, and then also, like, the thing with, like, fucking Melina and Alexei in the plane, the last thing we see of them is the tailwind of the plane breaks off, and they're like, oh shit, it's spinning out of control, and then the next time we see them, they're just on the ground already, just fine, and I'm like, what led from A to B? Like, it's not, you know, it's, like, not unbelievable that they could have found a way out of it since everyone else did, but, like, kind of weird that they cut that out.
It has a lot of hand-waving, which the last big character thing that happens before the sweet send-off is, like, Natasha does explain that she thought she killed the little girl, Antonia, you said it was?
Yeah, I think so. Some variation of Anthony as a girl name.
Yeah, that was, like, as Dreykov said, that's, like, her haunted past. And
Yeah.
at one point, she got locked up in a cell by the Red Guardian, and Natasha's like letting her out, saying, "I know you're going to chase me."
You mean by Taskmaster?
Yes, sorry. Natasha says to Taskmaster, "I know you're going to chase me if I let you out." Fuck it, lets him out, and then that's when they fall down, and then they spray her with the gas, and then she's released.
Right.
Then we get a little family goodbye as Ross comes up to arrest them all.
Why not? Why wouldn't she just get on that plane with them? I don't understand. But whatever.
Yeah, no, I don't get that either. But she said no. Yeah, why did she?
No, because they were on the ground without a plane, and she was like,
Yeah.
"I'm not going to drag you into this. You're not fighting with me. I'll get away on my own. You go do your own thing." And then a plane arrives with all the Black Widows,
With all the
and they're
widows
like,
on it,
"Oh, let's
and
get
they
on
take
the plane."
Taskmaster.
And she still is in the mindset of like, "Well, I just said go on without me," but like the plane is definitely the most efficient way for all of you to get the hell out of there right now.
Yeah, for sure. Especially because, and they might have guns, but Ross only has 20 SUVs. Can't fly an SUV. Okay, you probably can in these movies, but we've never seen a flying SUV.
No,
have we?
Coulson has a flying car in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I think, but
That's true.
But that's no longer canon. So
Sure isn't. But then we get to a pre-credits scene. Is the best way I can describe how it feels. It cuts from her standing there in the wreckage of the Red Room base to her with her blonde bob from Avengers Infinity War.
Yeah.
Getting the plane from her fixer to rescue people from the raft, which happens.
The question we were
Civil War.
all asking was, how did they get that plane? Which, I guess in retrospect, kind of a good question to ask, but I wasn't asking that question.
I recently went through the MCU again, and when I hit Civil War, the whole end sequence of just montaging through Tony's life, reading the letter from Captain America, it just cuts to inside the raft. The movie set up the fact that this floating prison in the middle of the ocean is impossible to get to, and then we just cut to Steve Rogers sneaking around don't tell anybody.
Because he's that good, Colin.
Yeah, but I was just okay, but still how? And it does at least answer that question. Again, the question maybe only I was asking.
Well, I was more so mentioning, in Infinity War, when they show up with the plane, the question of where did they get that plane, which I think was more so a question that nobody was asking.
Okay, that's true. So I guess they've had this plane for 2 years in between the two movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's why this whole movie takes place during the very end of Civil War, because the beginning
because
is Ross
she's like,
coming
"Oh,
after
I'm going to go break out
Sokovia.
some friends," right?
Yeah,
and we're like,
the end is
I
her going to
figured that
break out
Steve did that on his own.
Yep. So
Makes
that's so that's fun. But yeah, that's kind of the movie. Let's talk about some of the stuff that's been bugging us. Chowder, let's hear you let loose on this villain development. Give me your thoughts.
I kind of blew my load earlier. My thoughts.
Sorry,
but
I was drinking water. That surprised me.
But yeah.
So was I.
Yeah. I mean, I think he was just not interesting.
I agree.
Even remotely. Like what you say about the metaphor. I see that. It's very on the nose, but that's all subtext.
Yes.
Textually, he isn't relevant before, isn't relevant after, and in the moment he
doesn't really have enough of a presence.
He doesn't really have anything. He stands for nothing. He wants power and influence, but even the most megalomaniacal jackass has reasons. Even Dr. Doom has reasons for being Dr. Doom.
Yeah, my thing with him is I don't really mind him being just a power hungry motherfucker, but I think that the movie in general lacked a good villain presence, because I wasn't really I didn't get out of the movie being like, man, I wish they did more with Dreykov. I was kind of happy with the amount that he got, because he is kind of one-dimensional, and he is sort of he's the guy in charge, but he's not the threat. I wished that they did more with Taskmaster. I'm fine with Taskmaster being his daughter. That's fine. I wish that they had given her, I don't know, any dialogue for the majority of the movie, because Taskmaster in the comics at least is also a master strategist, right? And they didn't play with the powers that Taskmaster has enough. I felt like. So it it was just kind of like
keep
a
in
dog
mind,
in the corner of the room, like the muscle, you know, like she never really had any more than that, which I feel like she could have, especially since it was the significant character. I also feel like, I don't know, maybe they could have done more or added more people that it could have potentially been to make that not such like, because like that's where I was in the movie. Is as soon as we discovered that Melina was alive, I'm like, oh, okay, so Taskmaster is the daughter, because it's definitely one of those two people. So I don't know, maybe it would have been weird to ask to put more people in the movie to be like, who is this guy? But you know,
I have a hypothesis for where these issues come from, and I think that adding intrigue might not be the solution. I would like to posit that just in general, this movie has sort of an identity conflict at its core. Yeah. We had that scene that I spotlighted in the house with the fake family saying, I think this is good development for all these characters. And this movie, on one hand, Chowder, like you said earlier, the main theme of like family versus found family and all that, tying that back into the Avengers and whatnot. I think that is a solid theme to base a movie on, but I think only like a half of the movie is based on it.
Yeah.
Because the themes of family do not fully connect to what happens with the villains. And I think that those two ideas, those stories come at each other's cost, and they chose to go more on the family side.
There could have been...
also happens with the style, because a lot of the movie, again, to Chowder's point, very Bourne Identity, Bourne Ultimatum-esque in the way it's shooting fight scenes. And it does feel that way until suddenly it feels like a Marvel movie. And just on, even in the soundtrack, there are moments of like these weird, interesting things that they're doing, basic but interesting, and then just the big sweeping Marvel scores. At every point, I felt like every aspect of this movie had two halves vying for attention, and it came at the cost of a more focused movie. I think we could have a movie where Taskmaster is an interesting villain. I think that might also come at the cost of what we got with the family. And honestly, I might have preferred that. I'm also really just like, Taskmaster was so cool to watch, so visually interesting. Even
for for the couple scenes that they popped in the trailer that we saw, you know, it's just like, but I feel like a lot of the choreography was a little bit underused, like at other times.
Yes.
Like it was mostly like the majority of what that character was just making like visual callbacks to other like memorable Marvel movie moments that realistically the Taskmaster would have had no way of seeing, you know, like a lot of them.
Yeah.
And to Colin's point, though, about like the struggle with the family dynamic and how that doesn't tie into the villains, what really kills me is it so easily could have, because you've got this comparison with these four people who aren't related, who are now finding that they're going to be a family, which then ties into the whole theme of her being a family with the Avengers. And then the villains are father and daughter, and he thinks of her as an object, and they're not a family, and he's just like, oh, I'm glad you blew up my daughter, because then I got a really good weapon. And beside that line, it's not explored a whole lot, and it really could have been to be like that dichotomy between, you know, like the found family versus like the really, really toxic you know, incarnation of the blood family, and they don't do that, which kind of like leaves both characters just feeling a little bit dry at the end, because it's like
also Vin Diesel doesn't ride in on a muscle car or going, take my hand.
Another thing to consider, though, is
Natasha!
This movie is just over 2 hours. It's a bit shorter than what we've gotten before, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm glad it was not a super long movie. I had fun for its length, and if it dragged on longer, it probably would not have felt great. And I'm wondering how much of this was just like, let's cut it down for time. I'm wondering
there were characters I thought like
that we didn't see.
Could have used some more exploring. Like I feel like we could have gotten a few more scenes in between, you know, like but to that point, I feel like probably some other stuff could have been cut at the expense of that, rather than just making an overall lengthier
and again,
movie.
That's why I view this movie as having that identity crisis. There are conflicting forces that they wrote, and they chose to prioritize certain ones at the cost of others. It doesn't have to be that way, but that's what it feels like.
That's my thing, where it feels like such a divergent point in the timeline, where it feels like the plot adds some elements of character developments and plot elements to pull it away from how we thought it was, and then at the end of the movie it brings it all back, if that makes sense. Like, I talked earlier about how, like, you know, before the, like, in the timeline before this movie came out, we thought that the Red Room was destroyed. Then this movie introduces that the Red Room is still there, and then they destroy it at the end of it, so it goes back. No, but that's also kind of how it was with Natasha's characterization, where, like, as far as we're concerned, like, during Civil War and all of that, we already thought that Natasha thought of the Avengers as a family. And then by the next time we see her in Infinity War, they're acting more familial than ever, right? So we didn't really know that she had this crisis, which contextually makes sense with the plot of Civil War, but it wasn't introduced in Civil War, so it makes it feel like that divergent point where it's like, we didn't know that she was having this crisis of, you know, thinking that her family was falling apart and then had to fix that. So it feels like before this movie existed, it was just a straight line in the timeline, but now it feels like, oh, let's pull it up and then let's pull it back to neatly put it back in the timeline, which I get, but I don't know.
I'm okay with that as like a franchise structuring decision, because I think that's the point of having something this large, is so that you can have these tangents. You can have this thing that adds context without necessarily having to change everything. I think it's a healthy part of it. I think it's maybe not what we're used to with the MCU, but like as I go back through some older sitcoms and older procedural shows, like that's just how storytelling used to work in movies and TV.
Sure, and I'm trying to communicate this correctly, because it's like it's not something that I inherently have a problem with, but it is kind of made worse by the fact that the movie as a standalone feature, like, didn't really do enough to wow me as a lot of other standalone Marvel stuff, ignoring how it connects to the rest of the universe. So it sort of feels like it had to try harder to keep my attention, and like Chowder was saying earlier, didn't really, like, kind of fell short on that in a lot of ways. You know what I mean?
The point that you really clarified for me is just exactly how many times the movie has a threat that it assumes, whether it tells you or not, it assumes has been vanquished, and then says it's not, and expects us to be surprised, and then vanquishes it. That sort of like curve for each plot point. That really stands out as, I think, a symptom of some of these bigger structural issues, and where I think the movie succeeds, and why on the whole I still had a good time, is the family characters of Natasha, Yelena, Alexei, and Melina. Those are fun characters. I enjoy them. They have their Marvel quips. They have good characterization. They have fantastic casting. And it kind of for all the hand waving the movie does, I'm like, yeah, fine. Just let me watch Florence Pugh. Like, okay, whatever.
But I guess at the end of the day, I just wish that.
Oh, hell no, Natasha. That's your little sister. You don't say that to family.
At the end of the day, I'm just like, that was also the part of the movie that I enjoyed, was the characterization and their dynamic with each other, and I wish that was explored a little bit more in plot relevant ways in the movie, which honestly, is like how I wanted the villains to be developed, was like something to complement that, and like we had fun scenes with them, but like at the end of the day, you know, they went in as a team together to do this, and there was nothing about like their family dynamic that really saved the day. You know what I mean?
To take my hypothesis to its fullest extension, I honestly would have probably preferred if this movie was all about conflict within the family, or really hard about Dreykov and Taskmaster, and maybe it's just Natasha and Yelena. Like, go really hard in either direction, and I think you have a more focused project that doesn't leave as many of these, well, why'd you do that kind of moments.
Right, because, like, aside from their little kerfuffle the first time that they meet up, like, Natasha and Yelena are pretty much on the same page for the rest of the movie. So, like, if you're trying to set up this dynamic of, like, oh, she doesn't think of these people as their family anymore because she's got a real family now, and, like, to Yelena, they were always her real family, and, like, explore that space a little bit more. Like, they didn't really have that many moments between them that explored that. It was more, like, moments between Yelena and Alexei, or, like, you know.
We did have them talking about the 3-point landing and the cargo vest. Those were fun.
Yeah, that was funny.
Those are good character moments.
Both times I saw it, when Yelena is roasting Natasha for the way she lands and flips her hair back. That's such a. I mean, it's the kind of self-aware thing that, franchises do now that is common, but it really hit home because it's straight up saying your movies are stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think
So good.
I think what works really what I think works is it adds a little bit of texture to Black Widow.
It does.
One of my main complaints about her as a character is that she's your by the book femme fatale kind of character, and like having her sister like point out the 3-point landing and the hair flip thing, it adds this idea that like Black Widow is maybe a little bit
not that.
Yeah.
Right, like she's kind of a celebrity,
like,
and she acts like it more than she wants to admit, kind of
To
thing.
take the movie
she's
outside of its...
This is an image she projects, and
to take this
like
movie
that.
outside of the vacuum that I've been trying to use to discuss it, and like this movie relies a lot on stuff that happened in Civil War and in the Avengers, but it kind of ignores what happens in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, which gives her celebrity, which is at the end of the movie. She's like, we need to bring down Hydra. So I will risk exposing all of my past and secret identities. Like that was not. I mean, what's Chowder? You're right.
True.
The texture here is
well.
we learn that there might have been some vanity to that decision, but we also never in the movie confront the fact that like that was presented as a sacrifice for her to be well known. That was not like a good thing for her.
Yeah, and she never really like got any consequences for that, like in any other movie that we see her. Yeah. The one joke like that, poking fun at that I did really enjoy the most was when when Yelena was like, I don't remember the setup for it exactly, but she was just like, oh, I bet the Asgardian god is never the one who has to take an Advil.
Yeah, he doesn't have to take any ibuprofen after a fight.
Yeah.
Anyway,
really
we've been going for a while. Do you have any last... I think I have one thing I want to bring up. Do you guys have any last thoughts before we want to kick it to our wrap-up ratings?
I think we touched on most of the things that I've wanted to talk about personally.
Chowder, you got any more Vin Diesel quotes?
Just the imagery... You called me out there. Just the imagery of Vin Diesel blasting Dreykov with a shotgun going, you don't do that!
Yeah. I put a chip in the back of her neck. Yeah, I think that something I saw someone else commenting about this, and it really kind of started thinking about it, and it's what made me think about the Winter Soldier connection too. Is just like in Avengers in Endgame when she beefs it off the cliff, like. I feel like in the moment we're getting the context of just like it's her, like she and Clint love each other, so they want to try to save the other person as best as he can. I think what this movie does add, if you want to see it, but it's not necessary, is the journey of her being like fully about self-preservation to willing to risk herself like for the Taskmaster. I think that is a worthwhile flip because we don't know enough about her character to read too deeply into her sacrifice in Endgame.
Right. I guess that's another...
This.
Yeah.
That's another thing where it's like, if this movie came before that, then it would add that context that would make it feel better. That would like add that through line. Whereas before we had that and we're like, that seems like a realistic, arc for her character to be feeling this way. We just haven't seen the journey. That's fair. Whereas then adding the journey in post is kind of like, well, we already knew that. You know what I mean?
It's what a prequel does. It is in a weird spot. On one hand, I understand the complaints of just like, what's the point? But on the other hand, I'm like, it is also a movie, so have fun, I guess. I don't know. I find myself of two minds about it. But I think that it does succeed in a lot of ways that maybe aren't being discussed quite as much. I think it fails in a lot of the ways we've discussed. But we can. I have nothing else to add before ratings.
Right, and I think my kind of buttoning up statement on that can come with my ratings. But so let's move into that. Thank you both for a very good discussion.
Hey, you're welcome.
We are going to move now to the ratings section. What?
Nothing stronger than family. And you guys,
exactly.
You're my family.
Right, Vin?
It was real to me. How many more of these can I throw out before you guys kick me off the call?
I mean, I'm kind of there now, to be honest.
Let's hurry up.
Right now we're at that point where we're driving down the road parallel to each other in two different cars, and we're
about to nod at each other.
Diverge in the past. Yeah.
Okay.
Now we are going to move on to the rating section, where each of us are going to rate the topic on a scale from 1 to 10.
Hair flips.
Yeah, I think that's muscle cars, maybe Fast and Furious
That's
cars.
not
Muscle
10.
cars,
That's
okay.
just Chowder's joke. That's not the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't stop
Well,
this.
if there
You're
was
right, there is
anything
nothing
in the
stronger than
movie
family.
that was a better, like, what are we gonna do? Fucking 1 to 10 red vials? That's boring as shit. I
Hair
like 1 to 10
flips.
Vin Diesels
Hair
because it was all
flips.
about family. It's relevant.
Wait, no. I got one.
What?
1 to 10, vest pockets.
Oh, that's good.
You could put so much stuff in them, you'll never know.
You can put so many Vin Diesels in there.
One Vin Diesel, vest pockets with little Vin Diesels poking out.
Exactly.
You
How
happy
many little
now?
Vin Diesels do you have in your pockets? That's how we're okay. Colin, you want to start us off here? How'd you feel
Yeah.
about Black Widow?
I've got some mixed feelings about it, but on the whole, I enjoyed it both times I watched it, and I wouldn't mind watching it again. Black Widow, to me, has always felt super underdeveloped in these movies, and I felt like a lot of the appreciation for her came from a starvation for serious female representation in these movies. Especially considering how literally a sex object she is in Iron Man 2, and how they drew her out to here, I think is like...
I
that's
need
a
an
pretty
explanation
necessary
of the
course
time
correction.
that she decided to have that haircut. You know, I need a quip that's like, I'm thinking about getting a perm or whatever.
Big curls on the last here. But I mean, like, and I understand once again the irony of three dudes talking about a movie more or less about female empowerment. But I think that in some ways it's a good course correction. I think that in a lot of ways it's a really, I don't even want to say a strong character piece. I want to say it works as a character piece for this family. But it's still a Marvel movie. It is still fighting against itself in a lot of ways.
Yeah, for example, having a lot of, being about all that stuff, but still having a lot of shots where the camera is just pointed right up her asshole.
Yeah, a lot of those.
There were a number of those in this movie that I was surprised to see, and I was like, really?
But on one hand, Scarlett Johansson is very famous and very well-renowned for how beautiful she is. Do you think that maybe she puts that in her contract, like, you gotta get all the right angles in here?
No.
I also don't think so.
That's definitely male gaze.
What do you
in its
I mean,
most...
well, Chowder, to be fair, female director, female producers on this film. So in terms of the final cut, it was
storyboarders, writers,
the writers,
editors,
the writer,
there's more to it than just...
if there is a fucking Marvel script that has close up on this lady's butt written in the script, I'll flip my lid. That happens in the shots
I
and in the
wouldn't
edits.
be surprised.
I believe also a female editor. I can look that up as well. So
You must have had more than one editor.
well, there's a primary editor, the director and editor.
Gotcha.
They set up the however they want that to work, but that can really vary from project to project. But there's usually like a chief editor, someone listed as you edited this movie. Regardless, this film is fun to watch. It has a good message. It has some themes that resonate well with the characters, and at no point do I think this movie takes any idea to its fullest extent.
Yeah.
But it still gives you a little bit to think about, a little bit to know in the future. It's 7 out of 10 pockets for me. No Vin Diesels in my pockets, because this is her family, and nothing stronger than family, not even tiny Vin Diesels.
Okay. Chowder, how do you feel?
Well, ultimately, I didn't hate the movie. I didn't like the movie. I was just kind of meh. It's probably going to fade from my memory over time. I always saw Black Widow as I said before, a by-the-book femme fatale character. This movie does help a little bit, but doesn't go the whole way. I feel that the context in which you experience something, or experience a work of art, is as important as the experience of the work of art. So
And this coming out 5 years after Civil War is hard to ignore.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Because it doesn't really have a
I'm gonna
reason
give it.
to,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I give it like 4
Oof.
pockets full of Vin
Ouch.
Diesels over 10. 4, 5. I consider 4, 5, and 6 like middle, varying levels of middle.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's so. I would personally, I'm gonna say I'd give it 6 pockets of Vin Diesel, just because a little hot pocket of Vin Diesel, just because like I agree pretty much with all the problems that Chowder had with it. I think that like I saw I saw a great YouTube thumbnail talking about this video where the title of the video, or like on the thumbnail, just wrote "Too little, too late," and I'm like, yeah, that is kind of how I feel about this movie, where it's just like, yes, we did really need a Black Widow movie, but to have it take place in between Civil War and Infinity War and have there be no like story arc reason for the movie to happen after that, you know what I mean? Like, the only reason it takes place is because of the studio and when this movie could be made and blah blah blah. But like, I would be a lot more forgiving of a lot of the stuff in this movie if it literally was the first movie after Civil War, or at least in that era.
I think I made a concerted effort to try to view it through that lens, because I know that like I agree that the context is important, but I'd be interested to discuss this again when we have the context of, hey, this movie came out 5 years ago and I'm just binging the MCU for lulz, and we watch it in, like, the
and if like
order.
I think
I imagine if you watch it in that context, it'll probably feel better.
Like, even if you watch the MCU in release order, I still feel like you should move this particular film up. Because I don't feel like, I don't think that any other movie, like Guardians of the Galaxy, for example, like takes place right after the first one. The second one does.
It does.
And granted, this one does not have much to do with the rest of the MCU timeline, so it gets away with that a lot more. But like, it didn't really mess with the movie to be like, okay, now we're back to 2014, even though we've seen several movies in between that have take place after it. Like, which, granted, that's because it's Guardians and it's way out in the middle of space or whatever, and it doesn't hardly matter when it took place. But this one, I really feel like, again, I'd forgive a lot more if it came out when it ought to have, but the caveat to that is I don't think that like moving it up in the timeline or moving it up in the the watch timeline fixes all of its problems.
I agree.
I agree that like all of the stuff, the villains in this movie are very weak, and if they had just kind of picked the theme and explored it a little bit more with the main characters, then that could have tied more into the villains with the whole family aspect and stuff like that. And it seems like it would have been relatively easy to do that, and they just kind of didn't. More so, I wish they used Taskmaster more and had it be more of like a problem-solving thing of like, how do you beat this person who fights just like you or fights like other people, regardless of who the identity of the Taskmaster ended up being. I just think that there should have been more of that in the movie. The things that I did like about it, I liked all the characters for what we got of them. Like I thought they were all well done. There wasn't like, any character decisions that I'm like, no, fuck you. You know what I mean? Like, they wouldn't do that, or like it all felt like it made sense, and contextually it makes sense that she's feeling this way and acting this way after Civil War. It just feels weird to get that story now, where we had already kind of long since accepted that she kind of just got back together with Steve and Falcon and have been on the run for the past few years, So to add that like divergent storyline of like, oh, she was having this like family crisis in the middle of this, not like literal. I mean, yes, she was having a literal family crisis with her real fake family, but also like having this identity crisis of whether or not she should be with her family or not, being the Avengers. Like,
but
that's
what prequels are supposed to do. So
no, but yeah, okay, but we add prequels. Like, I'm trying to think of a good example of this, because truly, I think like a lot of prequels end up being bad for a lot of the same reasons. But like, you're supposed to. It's not a prequel. Like, I don't think I'd be questioning any of these things if it was a true prequel being her origin story. You know what I mean? But to have it be a prequel where it is in the middle of this character's arc, which we did not question how she got from A to B before, because it all felt natural in the movies that we'd seen her in. You know what I mean? So it's not just that it's a prequel, it's that it's both a prequel and a sequel to things that we had already seen and established about the character. And I think that messes with the prequel dynamic a bit.
I like that part of it. I like that it was set when it was set. I like that they stuck to it.
Yeah, no, I mean,
and
I
I
like
think
it.
that like it's okay to ask a question that we weren't asking before because I think
Sure.
we got interesting answers.
But that's my thing, is that I don't think that the answers to those questions that they raised were ultimately that interesting. But again, like, this is all me talking about it, comparing to the way that previous Marvel movies have done it. I still thought it was a fairly good movie, just not really up to, I guess, my own Marvel standards, if that makes sense. Like, I would put this fairly down on the Marvel list for myself, but as a movie in and of itself, like, it still is a Marvel movie, which I think are generally pretty good, even the ones that people, like to give flack. And I think that it's for the most part up to par, just not in some key ways that I would have liked it to be. But yeah, that's pretty much my thing. That's why I'm giving it 6, because it's like I still liked it, but it's kind of lower down for me on the Marvel movie scale. But yeah, I think that's a pretty good time to wrap it up for us today. Thank you for listening to the Common Geeking program. Again, I've been your host, Jeff Leavitt. You can find me on my YouTube toy review channel, Alchemist Prime Reviews, and I've got an Instagram that I posted art stuff over a year ago, and will probably eventually. That's things I wish existed. There's a dot between each word, but yeah, if you're looking for new content on that, you might have to wait a bit. Again, I've been joined by Colin and Chowder. Do either of you have links you want to toss out there?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Colin. I apparently like this movie more than the other two. And if you want to hear more of my opinions on things, that's weird, but you can just go to dicepopuli.com, commongeekingprogram.com. I do a lot of these things. I think it's fun to talk to people about stuff.
Hi, I'm Taeemul or Chowder, whichever you prefer. You can find me on Twitter at Taeemul Chowder.
All right, and our next episode is going to be, God, every time I'm like, hey, you guys want to toss out some links, which would be just the fucking perfect time while you guys are talking to pull up the schedule for when the next episode is going to come out, but I never
and doing
do.
Nothing productive.
Yeah. Our next episode, which is going to be a common briefing program where we talk about the geek news of the month, is going to be on the first Friday of August, which is Friday the 6th of August. And our next regular briefing, or common geeking program episode, where we talk about some other piece of geek media, is going to be on the third Friday in August, the 20th. So stay tuned for both of those. And that's pretty much all we got here. Thanks for listening, subscribing, sharing, everything you do for us, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye!
The Common Geeking program is hosted by Jeff Leavitt, joined this episode by Taeemul Chowdhury and Colin Ketchen. This episode is sponsored by a fake sponsor joke. I don't feel like coming up with one. Sorry. The podcast is created and produced by Colin Ketchen and Jeff Leavitt and features original music by Colin Ketchen. This episode was edited by Taeemul Chowdhury. Yeah, I'm not him. I'm just recording the credits. Don't worry about it. We'd love for you to stay engaged with us on social media at Geeking Program or by using hashtag CGP. If you want to know more about us and all of our other projects, head to commongeekingprogram.com. Stay in touch, stay tuned, and as always, thank you for listening to this.